Hi, I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms, and you're listening to The Decibel from the Globe and Mail.
Hello? Sara vannu kayna aaru vichenu parayana?
Bhopalil ninnu Kurup vichenu parnaa madi.
Aaru?
Kurup.
Who are you?
Myself Govi Richmond.
That's an excerpt from Kurup, a Malayalam language crime thriller recently shown in some Cineplex theaters near Toronto. But last week, instead of the action staying on the screen, it actually happened inside theaters in Richmond Hill and Oakville. Someone, or maybe more than one person, slipped in, slashed 4 movie screens, and then slipped away. And this isn't the first time that's happened.
There was a feeling that the police were not taking it seriously enough because it has been going on for many years and nobody has been arrested, and it still seems to be occurring.
That's Joe Castaldo, a journalist with the Globe's Report on Business. He's here to explain what's been going on and why this vandalism might be happening. This is The Decibel. Joe, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, how did you first hear about this story?
Well, a few months ago, I got an email from somebody who never identified themselves, who said I should look into what's happening with movie theaters in the Greater Toronto area that have been screening South Indian language movies, because many of them have been vandalized.
When did these incidents first start happening, actually?
So the first incidents that I was able to confirm, anyway, go back to 2015 at Cineplex theaters in the GTA. At the time, they were showing a Tamil movie, and the screens were torn up. And so Cineplex pulled this movie from their theaters after this incident.
And do we know, how many incidents from that time?
So I know at least 7 different movies have been affected in multiple theaters. So we're talking locations in Brampton, Mississauga, Scarborough, one downtown Toronto, one in Kitchener, and one in Whitby.
What do all these movies have in common then?
So all the theaters that have been vandalized in this way were screening South Indian language movies, so Tamil, Telugu, or Malayalam. We're not talking about Bollywood films, which typically are in Hindi. We're talking about other South Indian languages, and this is only happening in the Greater Toronto area.
This is a part of the GTA with a fairly significant South Asian population. Can you tell us exactly what this vandalism is consisting of, though? What's actually happening in these theaters?
Yeah, so the pattern is the same. It seems sometimes a screen is cut up as a movie has been playing, or when it's actually screening. There's a video I saw of one incident where the theater was empty. The screen was slashed. There's somebody who just takes a sharp object and walks right across and cuts it from left to right. And then there were a few other incidents where, screens were slashed and then some kind of noxious substance was released into the theater. So people had to evacuate at that point.
What do you mean? What kind of substance was this?
Police said they believe it was, in one case, something like pepper spray. In another case, they believed it was bear spray.
So we're not just talking about someone entering an empty theater and slashing a screen. These are actually attacks on people in the theater, on moviegoers then.
So in 2019, at 2 landmark theaters, one in Whitby and one in Kitchener, police believe there was one individual who, I believe, first went to the Kitchener theater, slashed the screen, and sprayed audience members with some kind of noxious substance. And then the man drove from Kitchener to Whitby at another landmark theater, screening the same movie, and did the exact same thing there.
Can we look at, the bigger picture here? How do these South Asian films get to Canada? How does this system work?
Yeah, so there are local or regional distributors who pay for the rights that they obtain from a global distributor, and they have to find a home for these movies. So they arrange deals with theater chains to show them, and that's how they make their money.
And do we have a general sense of how much money we're talking about? Like, how much does a distributor pay for the rights to a film?
So one distributor told me he paid tens of thousands of dollars for the rights to one particular movie. And when Cineplex decided to pull the movie, that distributor lost money, obviously, because the movie was not screening anymore. And so he told me that he is thinking about getting out of the distribution industry now because it is so hard to place these movies in Southern Ontario because theaters are reluctant to show them.
Since these incidents, again, are targeting a specific kind of movie, so we said Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, I guess, what are people telling you? What are you hearing about the potential motivation behind these incidents? Is it potentially motivated by racism?
That's not what I heard from the film distributors. So they are all convinced that what is really going on is that there is somebody out there or some group of individuals that is effectively trying to control the market for these movies. They are using these tactics to intimidate theaters into not screening these movies so that they can obtain the distribution rights for cheap and show these movies in theaters that they have some kind of connection to so that they can get the revenue from ticket sales. Now, there's no hard evidence that this is what's going on, but this is what everybody believes from people who have been doing this for a very long time and have noticed this pattern and have really noticed that these incidents started occurring sometime after Cineplex, a very big movie chain, started to screen these films in their theaters in the Greater Toronto area. And so, yeah, the distributors say these are intimidation tactics to get the theaters not to show these movies. And for them, that's upsetting for a few reasons. One, it affects their business. It's harder for them to find a home for these movies in Southern Ontario. One told me he's, worried about going out of business at this point. And two, for people in the community, there are just fewer places for them to watch these movies. And they're quite popular. Like we're talking about, blockbuster action movies that do bring in a lot of ticket sales. And there's a lot of frustration as well. So some distributors I spoke to told me that, they're upset that it seems like theaters are capitulating. They are giving in to these intimidation tactics. And what they want the theaters to do is just show the movies and hire more security as opposed to giving in.
Why is it that their response is to just pull the movie? Is there a reason behind why that seems to be the way that this ends up?
So I can only guess because none of the theaters that have been affected talked to me for this article. But you have to assume there's some kind of risk-reward calculation that's going on here. Obviously, there is the risk of property damage when this happens. They have to pay to replace the screen and the theater is out of commission for a while. And two, there's concern about people being injured. If someone is spraying a noxious substance inside a theater, then people can get hurt. And it may just be a risk that they do not want to take on at this point.
So you've also been talking to people who want to go see these movies. So people probably largely, not necessarily exclusively, but maybe largely in the South Asian community who want to go see these films. For a diaspora population, this is a connection back home, right? This is a way to hear a film in a language that you know and to maybe stay connected to a place that you're no longer there in. So this must be, I would imagine, this is something that people must be upset about.
Exactly. Like I think when word spread that I was working on a story about this, I started to hear from a lot of people who found me through email or Twitter who, were upset about this issue and wanted something done about it. There was a feeling that the police were not taking it seriously enough because it has been going on for many years and nobody has been arrested, and it still seems to be occurring. And there are other independent theaters that show South Indian language movies, of course. But what's interesting is, there are 3 independent theaters in and around Toronto that have been doing this for a long time. And the distributors think that it is the ownership of these 3 theaters that is behind these attacks. They don't have any evidence for that, but these 3 theaters have been under suspicion for years. And what happened back in 2016 when there was vandalism at a bunch of Cineplex locations, there was a lot of speculation and accusations made on social media targeting these 3 theaters. And so the ownership group actually put out a statement at that time saying that, we have nothing to do with this. And so, I contacted them again for this story because they are still under suspicion. And they said the same thing. They have nothing to do with these attacks. And in fact, our locations have been hit many times over the years, but they did not provide any details. They didn't say when. Was it reported to the police? They didn't describe the nature of the vandalism. There was only one incident in 2016 where the washroom at one of these theaters was vandalized. They reported that to police. That was the only instance that I could confirm.
So you couldn't actually find any evidence that they had been hit in the same way that Cineplex or these other theaters had been hit then. Is that right?
Not anything that I could independently confirm. And I did ask for more specifics, for details on that so that I could confirm it. And at that point, they stopped replying to me.
And from your conversations with distributors and other people involved in this situation, is that still who they suspect is actually behind these incidents?
That is the working theory. But again, to be clear, the theaters say they have nothing to do with it. And nobody has come forward with any hard evidence linking anyone specific to any of these incidents.
I want to ask about the police investigation as well, because this mystery has not been solved yet. What do we know about the investigation up until this point?
So unfortunately, we don't know much because the police have not said much. And I think part of the challenge is, there are multiple regional police forces involved. I think there's at least 5, York Region, Peel Region, Toronto, Kitchener-Waterloo, and in Durham. And they've just been very tight-lipped about it. When I reached out, they either declined to comment, did not respond to comment, or just said there's an open file and they have no more details to share about it.
So it sounds like this does still remain a little bit of a mystery here, Joe. But I guess as you're watching this story, what are you looking for next? What are you watching for to see how this unfolds?
Well, nobody really believes that this is the last of it. People believe that something else is going to happen. Another theater could be hit. And I guess what's interesting is the targets seem to be broadening. So originally it started with Tamil movies, but now it's expanded to incorporate 2 other languages and maybe other geographies. There was one distributor I spoke to who said he struck a deal with Cineplex to show a Tamil movie in Atlantic Canada. And his business partner then got a threatening phone call from an individual who said that he was making a big mistake by doing this. And then Cineplex, according to the distributor, later decided that they were not going to show this Tamil movie in Atlantic Canada. After all, they were no longer comfortable showing it. This distributor managed to secure another movie with a different theater chain who also decided to pull out due to safety reasons.
Joe, thank you for following this story and for speaking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms. Our producers are Madeline White and Cheryl Sutherland. David Crosby edits the show. Kasia Mihailovich is our senior producer, and Angela Pacenza is our executive editor. Timon Johnson is our intern. Thanks to Joe Castaldo. You can find more of his work at theglobeandmail.com. You can also email us at thedecibel@globeandmail.com. If you want to reach me, I'm on Twitter at MainicaRW. And if you haven't already, please follow The Decibel wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.